we are kind of here sort of thing, and the windmill quarry's up in this area here.
Yep.
Is it the outside one where you go across the causeway between
Yes.
the two?
Yep.
Yes, right,
Yep.
okay.
Okay. So my understanding was historically that area was used for pumping water when the island was as a quarrying functions were on the go. So I guess they must have known something about wind at that point in time as well, and probably it was one of these wind turbines that you pointed out, Arthur, as well.
It was the fourth one along in his diagram.
All right.
The multi-bladed one.
All right. But I guess at that point in time it would have been installed probably up high, very much exposed obviously to the wind, and from a sighting perspective would have been very obvious. In effect, our prevailing wind direction is from a southwest, so the wind will tend to typically come up in this direction, up here. And what Arthur was talking about is that government data takes a big giant square of a kilometre wide, and it takes the average wind speed across that whole kilometre. The three kind of spots as I come back to that were kind of mentioned was, oh, what about Windmill Quarry? Well, the problem is that what you need to do is to get power from here, basically to the village hall here. So obviously, to get power there, you've got to either dig a track, or you've got to somehow sort of string it from pylons or a cable or whatever, and that's obviously a significant cost. It was also mentioned to me by a couple of folk that potentially with visitors coming onto the island, that in actual fact somewhere beside the village hall might be quite useful somewhere here as well. Problem with that is you've got a couple of issues there. You've got quite a lot of turbulent air potentially as the air comes across and goes across the houses in the community. It creates this turbulent effect, and also from just a safety perspective, ultimately, while wind turbines are safe, you don't want them right in literally as in such close proximity within the community. So in effect, what you're trying to do is kind of trying to determine an area that's A, relatively close to the hall, but B, is in what's called a clear wind or a non-turbulent wind, and potentially look at, from a safety perspective, how you still maintain a reasonable distance away from houses. And at the end of the day, I was also asked to look at an area out beside potentially where the stone skimming is carried out, and there's potential areas around here or here or here as well that potentially could be investigated. The attractiveness of that potentially is looking at you're relatively close to bringing cables back. You're in sort of what's called clean wind. And ultimately, you're a reasonable distance away from houses and whatnot. But I must stress, all I'm trying to do here is really kind of show as to the kind of process that you need to go through before you actually even identify where sensibly one should go. What I'd also guide you to do is kind of look at some of the pictures that are on the board there, showing you typically problem turbines in suitable locations, and that gets you a feel for the sort of scale of these turbines. I mean, if I can ask Rod, typically what height are we talking about from ground level to say where the rotor sits?
Both the 15 and the 6 kilowatts would be 15 metres from the ground to the hub height.
Does anybody know the height of the roof of the hall?
About 7 or 8 metres.
7 or 8 metres. So you're talking about just under twice the height of the hall, and that's up to the rotor. Obviously, the blades in themselves, the blade size or the
blade size for the 15 kilowatts, the diameter is 9 metres across, and for the 6 kilowatts, it's 5.5 metres.
So those are kind of some of the things to sort of consider and to think of. If I talk about briefly about the heat pump side of things now, because that was obviously one of the other options we looked at. We looked at potentially putting some sort of collector pipe system in here into one of the quarry locks, and bringing the heated water or the water back to the village hall or your community hall here, and then concentrating that heat and putting it into the underfloor heating. Say technically it's great, but once again, what you do is you've got to run through the numbers. You've got to sort of calculate the cost of sort of putting pipes in there and some sort of cage system, making sure it's safe and contained. Just really from the point of view of damage to the pipes and damage can cause, and cost of kind of running along this track, etc. Compared with just putting a standalone unit that actually extracts the heat out of the air all around us. Because again, as Arthur pointed out, and actually because of our location here on Eisdeal, we actually have a very mild airstream and what's called an air source heat pump, which is taking air as the source of the heat, can actually work just about with the same efficiency as one that uses water. So really, I guess our role is to help kind of guide and available some of the information. So it may not be necessary, for example, to use that technically more difficult solution. It may be more sensible to actually use what's called an air source heat pump. There also may be an opportunity, but once again, all these are subject to planning, of looking at potentially using solar PV. So that's using the sun to generate electricity, and potentially looking at putting some panels in a suitable location in the island, once again to generate some electricity from the sun using solar PV. All of these things add up to the way these feed-in tariffs have been formed into a really quite a unique opportunity, where in effect the hall that we're in just now could be heated all year round using energy from potentially a wind turbine, where you're actually you're all effectively paying for this through your utility bills, but you effectively will be getting electricity into the hall to run your heat pump, creating renewable heat, which you'll receive a payment from 1st of April of next year. And you'll also, with that electricity that you're generating, the clean electricity, being made a payment under the feed-in tariff. So it's actually a very opportunistic time for this type of project. And what that will mean is that potentially the community organisation has a sustainable income then, which may allow you then to take bigger projects forward in the future. You'd be able to afford to then get studies done which you're able to pay for, which could potentially look at the island becoming almost independent and being able to manage maybe its whole energy needs